Are to my nephew, Tyler, a 22-year-old with a poker face and no love for HOA politics, agreed to sit next to me during peak hours. I handed him a clipboard and a backup battery bank. At 8 p.m., the first car pulled up. A blue sedan. Woman in her 40s, kids in the back. She slowed when she saw the gate, then lowered her window. Hi. Are we still good to park here for the festival? I smiled. Certainly. Parking is $500. Card or cash? She blinked. $500 per vehicle. She laughed like I'd told a joke. Then she saw the cameras, real ones, mounted on the gate posts, flashing red LEDs. She saw Tyler tapping on the tablet, logging license plates. She saw the tow trucks idling off to the side, both drivers sipping gas station coffee like they were waiting for open season. Is this a joke? No, ma'am. This is private commercial property. The lot was used yesterday without authorization, which caused significant damage. Today it's operating as a paid-use lot. $500 or you can find parking elsewhere. She gawked for another moment, then spun the wheel and sped off. The second car pulled up. Older man didn't even ask questions. Just handed me his card. Head down, muttering. First payment logged. One down. Within the next 20 minutes, we had a line of at least 15 vehicles. Some turned away without a word. Others argued, yelled, even cursed. A guy in a polo shirt accused me of gouging the community and said he'd report me to the Chamber of Commerce. I told him I'd be happy to provide receipts. He paid. By 1:00 p.m., we'd collected 9 full payments, 2 partials. One guy begged and pleaded. I let him off with $400 and turned away at least 30 vehicles. The tow truck drivers were gleeful. They'd already hauled 2 stubborn SUVs parked just outside the gate, trying to wait me out. Both drivers were HOA residents. And then, like clockwork, she appeared. Karen marched up like a school principal on fire, high heels, HOA-branded polo, clipboard, 2 other board members in tow looking unsure of themselves. Her eyes were locked on me with nuclear intensity. This is disgusting, she barked. What the hell do you think you're doing? Running a parking operation, I said, gesturing to the signs. It's legal. This is my property and as of today it's commercial use under local code. All registered, all insured. You're charging residents to park for a community event. No, I said calmly. I'm charging strangers to use land they have no right to be on. You gave them directions here. I'm just facilitating your logistics. You are embarrassing yourself. She hissed. This isn't how we do things in Pine Hill. Exactly. I'm not in Pine Hill. She turned to one of the board members, a guy I recognized from HOA newsletters, and waved her clipboard like it was a badge. Call the county. This violates zoning. I handed her a printed packet laminated just for drama, containing the property deed, zoning documentation, registration ID for temporary commercial event usage, and my written agreement with the security firm monitoring the gate. She flipped through it, jaw twitching. You went to all this trouble just to spite us number. I went to this trouble because yesterday over 100 vehicles used my land like it was a mall parking lot. No permission, no payment, no apology. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The guy next to her whispered something. She turned sharply, heels clicking, and stormed off. Tyler leaned over. That went better than I expected. I nodded, watching the tail end of another line of cars pulling away. Wait till she sees the invoice. By Monday morning, my lot looked like Fort Knox with Southern charm. The gate stood tall and smooth. The signs were laminated and locked in place, and my new motion-activated floodlights blinked awake every time a squirrel farted near the fence line. I wasn't just making a point anymore. I was making a case. The HOA Facebook group, however, was making a scene. Screenshots poured in from friends behind enemy lines. Karen had gone full PR meltdown. Predatory behavior. Unneighborly extortion. One resident even called me a capitalist parasite. I made sure to screenshot that one. It's not every day someone turns my business instincts into a Bond villain monologue. But I knew better than to underestimate Karen Lowry. She might have lost the parking war, but she was still president of the most entitled suburban thief in the county. And sure enough, by Wednesday, I got a formal notice, certified mail, legal header, real paper, and ink, petition for temporary injunction. She was trying to drag me into court to force a restriction on commercial activity during community-designated festival days. Her argument: my actions interfered with communal access and posed a hazard to families. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. Interfered? The only thing I interfered with was her fantasy that my land was some kind of community sandbox. Still, I passed the letter straight to my attorney, Greg Harris, a man who wore cowboy boots with his suit and had the permanent facial expression of someone who just found a loophole in your last breath. He read it, blinked twice, and said, "She filed this in the wrong jurisdiction. You're not in Pine Hill. She has zero standing." We responded in kind. Motion to dismiss attached with a helpful 3-page summary of Karen's overreach and photos of festival goers roasting hot dogs next to flammable materials on my land. The court didn't even grant a hearing. The petition was tossed within 72 hours. Karen's legal cannonball belly flopped into the shallow end. So, she pivoted. Next came the building inspector, a guy named Ron in khakis and a clipboard, who showed up Thursday afternoon looking nervous and sunburnt. "Got a complaint about some unauthorized structures," he mumbled, squinting at my gate. "Gate's legal," I said, handing him a laminated permit. "So's the temporary fencing. So's the signage." He gave a sheepish shrug. "Honestly, I figured. But we gotta check. Some lady's called 3 times. Claims the gate's disrupting residential traffic flow." I led him around the perimeter, showed him the surveyed boundary markers, walked him through the zoning registration, even let him test the gate mechanism. "Well," he said, flipping through his forms. "Looks like you're in the clear. Honestly, this is cleaner than half the jobs I inspect in actual residential zones." We shook hands. Ron left. I poured myself a drink. Karen, however, wasn't done flailing. That night, a mass email from the HOA board hit inboxes titled "Urgent Notice Addressing Neighborly Conflict." It was pure spin. No names mentioned, but the dog whistles were loud enough to perforate eardrums. Accusations of monetizing disruption, creating division, and bringing down the atmosphere of community events. At the bottom, a survey. Should Pine Hill pursue future legal channels to secure responsible usage of surrounding properties? I watched the votes trickle in through a mole screenshots. 60% no. Turns out not everyone enjoyed paying $500 to park on a dirt lot while being side-eyed by tow trucks. Go figure. By Friday, my inbox had shifted tone entirely. A few residents quietly anonymously reached out asking if I'd consider pre-arranged parking for future events. One offered to rent space during her daughter's graduation party. Another wanted to know if I'd take Venmo. Karen, silent, at least publicly, but I knew her type. Silence from her didn't mean surrender. It meant she was regrouping. Saturday night. Festival's done. Pop-up tents folded, balloons deflated, HOA Facebook page eerily quiet. For the first time in a week, there wasn't a single SUV idling in front of my gate. No one trying to sweet-talk their way into a discount, and no Karen storming around like she was the queen of asphalt. I cracked open a beer, leaned back in my lawn chair under the floodlight, and let myself exhale. Too early. At 3:11 a.m., my phone lit up. Motion alert. Gate camera. I sat up straight. The footage flickered live. 3 figures, all in hoodies, moving fast across the front of the lot. One held a crowbar. Another had what looked like a bolt cutter. The third, a gas can. I swore under my breath, slid on my boots, and hit the button on my security app, pre-programmed to alert both the private security firm and the sheriff's department. It wasn't the first time I'd prepared for this scenario. Hell, it wasn't even Plan B. This was Plan F, firebug neighbors. Within 4 minutes, the security truck rolled in from the far side road. Spotlights hit the gate. Sirens chirped once. And the 3 geniuses panicked badly. One tripped in the gravel and dropped the gas can. The other 2 made a run for the fence line, only to find it's not as easy to scale a 12T rolling gate when you're wearing Vans and carrying tools. One got caught in the wiring. The other tried to run straight through the scrub brush and caught a face full of cactus. The sheriff's deputies showed up right behind the security. Floodlights flicked on. Flashlights swept the scene. I walked out in jeans and a hoodie, coffee in hand, heart still pounding behind my ribs, but face calm. Professional even. The gas can was still half full. The crowbar left beside a fresh dent in the east side gate housing. The bolt cutters hadn't made it past the chain link reinforcement. I handed the deputies the camera footage straight from the cloud backup, timestamped with clear facial captures once the hoods came off during the scuffle. Recognize any of them? The deputy asked as one of the men was cuffed and seated on the back of the patrol car's bumper. I looked. Oh, I recognized him. The tall one with the busted lip and smoldering glare. That was Karen's nephew, Tyler Lowry. The shorter one with the buzz cut and HOA polo half torn at the collar. Steve Mathis, a current HOA board member. And if memory served, the guy who once bragged during a community barbecue that no one crosses Karen and wins. Apparently, Steve didn't count on crossing a reinforced aluminum gate and losing. The third one was a teenager, someone's misguided son, shaking like a leaf. I didn't know him, and to be honest, I didn't care. The officers took statements, photos, tool evidence. They even noted the charred paper remnants near the gate post. Some kind of ignition attempt, probably. Looks like they were trying to burn it, one officer muttered. Jesus. I nodded. Gasoline and metal. Real brain trust. This crew, Karen, of course, didn't show up at the scene, but you can bet I made sure her name came up loud and clear in my statement. I gave the full rundown. Prior harassment, unauthorized signage, false claims to residents, attempted civil injunction, and now this vandalism, and suspected arson conspiracy involving her family and her board. Any threats made recently? The deputy asked. I opened my phone, scrolled to a message I received 2 days ago from an unlisted number. Screenshot attached. Hope you made your cash 'cause that gate's not going to stand long. The number was registered to a disposable app. But the timing right after Karen's injunction got tossed. A little too poetic. They arrested all 3 on site. The next day, I filed my civil claim. A $4 million for damages, property violation, attempted arson, and emotional distress. My lawyer, Greg, added in the paperwork like he was filing a tax return. Calm, fast, and loaded with footnotes. And this time we named names Karen Lowry, Steve Mathis, the HOA board as co-defendants, citing negligent oversight and implied participation. Oh, and we included copies of the festival flyers with my lot on them, her email to HOA members about overflow access, and her multiple public comments framing me as uncooperative. The police charges came with conditions: trespassing, vandalism, criminal mischief, conspiracy to commit arson. Karen went silent. So did her board. But the neighborhood buzzing. You know it's going to be a good day when your lawyer shows up to court sipping coffee like he's about to close on a beach house. Greg Harris had that look. Calm, dangerous, and 2 steps ahead of whatever nonsense the other side was going to try. I'd brought him every email, voicemail, screenshot, gate camera feed, and legal document we'd collected over the last month. And he turned it into a warhead wrapped in legal precedent. We weren't just filing for damages. We were going for a civil take-on. Our suit named Karen Lowry personally, Steve Mathis for direct involvement, and the HOA board for reckless negligence and complicity through silence. The dollar amount, $250,000, and not a symbolic cent. The courtroom was cold. Real cold. You could smell the anxiety. Antiseptic and floral perfume, probably Karen's. She sat across the aisle, perfectly coiffed, looking like she'd just come from a spa, but her jaw was tighter than a banker's wallet. Greg opened strong. He laid out the timeline with surgical precision. Karen giving public assurance that my private lot was available for parking. HOA flyers and digital announcements with maps showing my property. The invasion of over 100 cars, the damage, dented containers, litter, illegal grilling, one urinating behind my trailer, my installation of illegal gate and signage. The attempt at a court injunction thrown out. The coincidental inspection cleared. And then the big one, the nighttime sabotage caught on high-definition camera featuring Steve and Karen's genius nephew Tyler trying to set my gate on fire with a gas can and a crowbar. Let me be clear, Greg told the judge, voice like velvet wrapped around a knife. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a pattern of escalation led by a person who believed that the rules didn't apply to her or to her HOA board until the law said otherwise. Karen's attorney tried a different tack. He spun it like a miscommunication. Claimed Karen never intended for the land to be used without permission. Said the parking signs weren't her direct orders, just community suggestions. Suggested the vandals were lone actors. And then we played the clip. Full screen, crystal clear. Tyler laughing while dragging the gas can. Steve's voice unmistakable. Hurry up before he catches us. That bastard had it coming. The courtroom fell silent. Karen's expression froze. Not rage, not even panic. Recognition, like it had finally hit her that she wasn't going to spin her way out of this one. The judge didn't even take the full day. The ruling came back after lunch. Full judgment in my favor. HOA board found negligent for allowing misinformation and failing to stop harassment. Karen personally liable for civil damages and defamation. Steve and Tyler named as criminal co-defendants pending the separate case, but the part that really made the room twitch. The judge ordered Karen immediately removed from the HOA presidency. Her position was vacated on the record. When she stood to speak or tried, the judge cut her off. "Ma'am, the court has heard enough from you." As the gavel hit wood, Greg leaned over and whispered, "That was surgical." I didn't smile. Not right away. I just watched Karen collect her bag, stunned and mechanical, and shuffle out with her now very expensive lawyer. Steve trailed behind, face red, ignoring the local news camera parked outside the courthouse. HOA residents began reaching out before I even left the building. Some to apologize, some to say they were relieved. One woman, older, quiet, used to be on the gardening committee, pulled me aside in the parking lot and said, "You have no idea how long we've waited for someone to shut her up." Apparently, this wasn't the first time Karen weaponized her HOA title. Just the first time she got caught. And now she wasn't untouchable anymore. 6 weeks later, my property looked a hell of a lot different. Where there used to be dented containers and stacks of warped plywood, now stood fresh gravel rows, a striped entry lane, and a gleaming white sign with bold navy lettering. Pine lot parking and events. Private venue. Book in advance. Underneath a small metal plaque that read $500 spontaneous entry fee or $20,000 rental. Your choice. I couldn't help myself. The business was legit now. Fully licensed, registered LLC, covered by commercial liability insurance with an event use clause strong enough to make a risk manager cry tears of joy. I had a permit to host up to 150 vehicles at a time, plus the option for seasonal expansion. But the best part, the new HOA president came to me. His name was Carl Sanders, mid-40s, former Army logistics guy, no-nonsense attitude, shaved head, and the kind of handshake that meant business. He'd been elected 2 weeks after the Karen collapse, and to his credit, he didn't waste time trying to pretend like things hadn't gone to hell. He asked for a meeting. I agreed. We sat under a canopy at the edge of the lot, sipping iced tea like two people who actually wanted to solve something. "We've got 2 more community events this year," he said. "No one wants a repeat of the summer festival." I nodded. Smart. I've looked at the numbers. You've got the infrastructure, cameras, security, space. No reason we can't do it clean this time. Fair contract, clear expectations. What would it cost us? I handed him a copy of the rate sheet. He raised an eyebrow at the top line. $20,000 flat per day, plus $5,000 refundable security deposit, plus event insurance. Karen would lose her damn mind, he muttered. She already did, I replied, sipping my tea. He laughed. You drive a hard bargain, Bowen. I drive a legal one. 2 days later, the HOA board voted to approve a formal parking and event use agreement with Pine Lot Parking and Events, LLC. Carl signed it himself. Deposit wired, contract notarized. We were officially partners. The first test, a fall harvest event, pumpkin stands, live music, food trucks, the works. Carl's wife even managed to convince a local craft brewery to set up a tasting tent. And on the day of the event, not one car drove onto my lot without scanning a QR code, checking in with the gate app, and following the chalk-drawn lanes I'd personally mapped out. I even hired a pair of local teenagers in neon vests to act as parking attendants. Karen. She watched it all from her porch 3 houses down, clutching her little dog like a hostage and staring daggers through sunglasses too big for her face. Her lawn looked neglected. Her mailbox leaned at a weird angle. No more HOA budget for weekly maintenance, I guessed. One of the parking teens leaned over and whispered, "Is that the lady who tried to burn your gate?" I smiled. She was president once. Now she's just Karen. The crowd that day was easygoing. The money was clean. And as the sun dipped behind the tree, turning the lot golden orange, I stood by the gate with a cold beer in one hand and my nephew Tyler, the good one, in the other, watching the last cars roll out. We did it right this time. On the way out, Carl slapped me on the shoulder and grinned. "See, told you we could work together." "You know," I said, "I think this might be the start of a beautiful overpriced friendship." We both laughed, and just as I was turning to close up, a family from out of town, license plate from Colorado, pulled up at the gate, windows down. "Hey," the dad called. "We're late for the event. Mind if we just park here for a bit?" I nodded. Toward the sign. He read it, blinked, and asked, "Is the 500 still real?" I grinned. "Absolutely." He looked at his wife, then at me. "You take Venmo, buddy?" "I take everything." It all started with a casual Thursday morning stroll across my property. 2 acres of weed-stained dirt, scattered pallets, and construction equipment I'd been meaning to organize for the last 4 months. I wasn't in a rush. The lot was mine, fully paid off, sitting right at the western edge of Pine Hill, a pristine HOA development where the grass was always suspiciously green and the smiles just a little too forced. I wasn't a member, never was, never planned to be. My land was zoned commercial, technically just outside the HOA's reach, and I liked it that way. Free, independent, out of reach from pastel cold bylaws and neighborhood Facebook drama. It was supposed to stay that way. That's why I almost dropped my coffee when I saw the first sign zip-tied to the old chain-link gate. Overflow parking Pine Hill Summer Bash with a fat red arrow pointing directly at my lot. At first, I laughed. Honestly, I thought it was some dumb mistake. Maybe a kid got creative or someone misread a map. I ripped the sign down, crumpled it, and went on with my day. But then I spotted a second one. This time staked into the gravel on the south end, half buried by wind-blown dust. Then a third duct taped to a pole near the HOA entrance. 3 signs, all pointing to my land. I called my foreman, Drew, who was hauling some sheet metal out of a shipping container that morning. "Hey, you see these signs?" I asked. "Yeah, I was going to mention that. Some HOA lady and a couple of teenagers were putting them up earlier. Said something about festival parking." My stomach dropped. I knew exactly who he meant. Karen Lowry, 59, HOA president, professional busybody, self-proclaimed community matriarch. She once left a handwritten note on my truck windshield because I parked too close to her hedge during a contractor meeting. I hadn't even crossed onto her side of the line. So, I did what any annoyed tax-paying Texan would do. I called her. The first 5 seconds of the call were pure Karen chipper over pleasant, clearly rehearsed. "Oh, Michael, so glad you called. I was actually hoping we could coordinate logistics before Saturday." "Logistics?" I asked flatly. "For the festival, Pine Hill Summer Bash. We're expecting a huge turnout this year, and we really appreciate you opening up that empty space next to the west entrance for parking. It'll really help relieve congestion." "Karen," I said slowly. "That land's not open. It's not for parking. It's my property." There was a pause just long enough for me to imagine her pursing her lips and looking dramatically over her planner. "Well, sure," she said, "but it's not being used and it's just dirt. People already assume it's part of the community space. We've already printed maps and signage. And print them." "Michael," she said, switching to that slow, syrupy tone people use right before saying something outrageous. "I understand you're sensitive about ownership, but the community needs support. Besides, it's just a weekend. Think of it as a contribution to the neighborhood spirit. The neighborhood I'm not part of." I snapped. "I pay property taxes. I maintain that lot myself. And I've had break-ins before. You didn't ask permission. You didn't even give me a heads up. Take down the signs." Her voice cooled immediately. "I think you're being a little difficult, Michael. This isn't about you. It's about the greater good." I hung up. By the next morning, the signs were back. New ones, too. Color printed, laminated, neatly taped to traffic cones. My lot was now the official overflow zone. Apparently, that same day, I spotted a post on the Pine Hill HOA Facebook page. Screenshot sent to me by a buddy who lived 2 blocks in, complete with a drone shot of my land, captioned, "Thank you to our generous neighbor for letting us use this space for the summer bash." I stared at it for a while and then I smiled. Because if Karen wanted to turn this into a parking lot, fine. She was about to find out what commercial use really looked like. Saturday morning rolled in like a freight train. By 8 o'clock, I was already sweating through my shirt, trying to organize some of the construction supplies on the far end of the lot before the heat really kicked in. The town was buzzing. You could hear music echoing from the HOA's central pavilion. 2 blocks away. Kids laughing, dogs barking, the occasional golf cart zipping around like it was a damn resort. I figured I had maybe an hour before the first guests tried anything stupid. I was wrong. By 8:30, the first SUV crept up to my gate. A white Lexus with 3 helium balloons bouncing off the roof rack and a couple inside wearing HOA t-shirts. They rolled through the open chain link like they'd done it 100 times, parked crooked near the gravel pile, and got out like they were walking into Walmart. I stood there stunned for a second, then made my way toward them. "Excuse me," I said. "You realize this is private property?" The man barely glanced at me. "Oh, it's fine. Karen said we could park here. She didn't ask me. I own this land." He paused halfway through opening the back hatch. "Yeah, but it's just for today, right? You're not even using it." I didn't have the energy to argue. I told him to keep an eye out for debris, then walked back to my trailer office to grab my phone. By the time I returned 10 minutes later, there were at least 24 cars on my lot. Sedans, trucks, a damn minivan with a bungee-corded sunshade draped over the windshield like it was tailgating. People were unloading coolers, lawn chairs, fold-out tables. Someone had set up a Bluetooth speaker and was blasting Katy Perry like it was their own backyard barbecue. I watched a group of kids chase each other through a pile of PVC piping. One kid tripped and landed right next to an exposed nail. No one noticed. 2 guys started hauling out a metal grill, not even one of those portable camping ones, but a full-sized backyard propane beast, and began setting it up next to one of my storage containers. That's when I saw it. The deep scratch along the side of my blue shipping container. Paint scraped, dented like something had backed into it. Probably the black truck I'd seen rolling through without slowing down. Its bed packed with festival crap. That was the last straw. I called the sheriff's department. The dispatcher was polite but disinterested. "Is there a disturbance? They've invaded my land. At least 30 vehicles. No permission. There's damage." "Sir, it sounds like a civil matter. Unless there's immediate danger or assault, we can't dispatch deputies. You'll need to file a report and pursue it legally." "Legally? They're trespassing?" "Yes, sir. It's a private property dispute." "Civil." I hung up mid-sentence and stared at my screen. This wasn't just some misunderstanding anymore. This was full-on occupation. Back outside, the smell of grilled hot dogs and lighter fluid filled the air. Someone had started handing out paper wristbands like they were running admissions. I saw a teenager pee behind my equipment shed. A group of women took selfies leaning against my excavator like it was some Instagram prop. I walked up to one woman whose SUV was parked diagonally across 2 makeshift rows near the eastern side. "You know this is private property, right?" She smiled without even looking up from her phone. "Oh." Karen cleared it. "It's just for the event. Don't worry, we'll clean up." "You scratched my container." "What container?" I pointed. She didn't even turn to look. "Oh, sorry. It's just old stuff, right?" She turned her back to me and kept scrolling. By noon, the lot held close to 100 cars. People had set up shade tents. Kids were playing frisbee dangerously close to exposed rebar. Someone brought a generator. A generator. I hadn't even installed power out here yet. I sat on the edge of the trailer stairs, seething. I wanted to scream. I wanted to start writing license plates down, but half of them were out of state, festival guests, visiting family. They didn't even know they were trespassing, and they didn't care. The best part, Karen hadn't shown up, not once. She was probably sipping mimosas in the HOA gazebo, patting herself on the back for solving the parking crisis. I took out my phone and started recording. Wide shots, license plates, interviews with myself narrating what was happening. Damage, trash, unsafe behavior. And then I stood and took a deep breath. If they wanted to use my land like a business, they were going to get a business. One I ran and it was going to be expensive. By Sunday morning, my lot looked like a war zone. Empty Solo cups, candy wrappers, tire tracks baked into the dust like fossils. There were crushed beer cans underfoot, one forgotten sandal, and at least 3 different folding chairs abandoned like casualties. Someone even left a baby stroller next to my storage container. No baby, thankfully. The grill crew had vanished overnight, but they'd kindly dumped their coals in a shallow hole near my PVC pile. Smoke stains still darkened the dirt. I didn't sleep much. I was too busy planning. By 7 a.m., a crew of contractors I'd called in a favor with rolled in. By 9, they'd started trenching and leveling the ground along the front edge of the property. By 11, we had the base post set for a retractable gate, industrial grade, with a coated keypad and motorized rollers. I spent nearly $5,000 that day, and every penny felt like a middle finger to Karen. By dusk, it was finished. A sleek metal gate just wide enough for 1 car at a time, flanked by a temporary wire fence with no trespassing signs every 10 feet. I had the words printed bold on the gate. Private lot, parking $500 per vehicle. Violators will be towed. I also ordered a laminated banner, bright yellow with black letters, no room for confusion, and had it strung across the top rail. The message wasn't subtle. I wasn't going to play defense anymore. That evening, I returned with a folding table, a sunshade tent, 2 camp chairs, and my old Clover credit card read.